what we are witnessing here in the book of Nehemiah is like a clinic in prayer. Nehemiah is demonstrating to us how to pray effectual prayer, prayer that is powerful, prayer that is purposeful, and of course, prayer that is in line with the Torah, and prayer that has with it humility, and prayer that seems to come as a result of a person who have spent time in the Word, and his time in the Word and time reading and studying the Torah has taught him the biblical, and I'll just say the Torah or our scriptures, the righteous way and the biblical pattern for prayer. So I want to look at that in this video because it starts off, his prayer starts off when he actually starts to pray. We dealt with the other things led up to the prayer in the last video. If you haven't seen it, please go back and watch the video where I talked about Nehemiah prays for us. Oh, and by the way, if you're in the room, like the video. And if these messages are encouraging you and you are enjoying them, then send support to the ARC so we can keep doing this full time. We appreciate it. Any donation to the station will be used to continue to get the word of Abba Yah to the four corners of the earth to help us wake up Jacob. All right, so Todah Rabbah for that. Okay, so when we look at this prayer and we see him putting on a clinic, I mean, he's such a great example of how we approach Abba Yah when we actually begin to pray. And here, I just want to look at verse 6 and 7. We may not get too much further than that because these videos are, purposefully, they are designed to be short. So I want to just jump right in. So Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 6. Let thine ear now be attentive and thy eyes open, that you may hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now, day and night, watch now, for the children of Israel, which is us, by the way, thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel. Then he included himself, which we have sinned against thee. So when we examine this prayer and the introduction of this prayer, we see that after spending time, we talked about this, after spending time sitting down, contemplation and stillness, weeping, mourning, fasting, and then prayer, we see that the prayer is now in the proper position. And we see that the prayer, the one doing the praying, we see he is now in the proper posture for prayer. And of course, he also knows where to get the information to pray, which is obviously Torah. We've been talking about that. And so he is now ready to proceed. So we hear him saying, let thine ear now be attentive and let thine eyes be open. So he's asking for Yah to hear the prayer and to see the situation, which he, based on what's going on with Israel, because he had promised that he would always have an eye on Israel, especially if by the sins of Israel, they ended up being scattered. Now, I want to show you something. Notice how he starts this prayer by saying, we have sinned against thee. And that is really, after we address our Heavenly Father, we address Abba Yah for who he is and his power and his might and his majesty, his holiness and his faithfulness toward the house of Israel. The very first words that should come out of our mouth, Zion, is confession. Not begging, not boasting, but confession. And confession and testimony are not necessarily the same thing. So when we go in prayer, we don't necessarily, I'm talking about this type of prayer, we don't necessarily go in prayer to testify to Yah about what we have done, because, you know, some of our testifying, it sometimes becomes test-lying. So we have to be careful about giving so much testimony to him, because we will fall in the and not necessarily a trap, but we'll fall into the same mindset that Job had for just a small moment, where he felt like, if I could just tell Yah my testimony, if I could just tell Yah my testimony, then he'd just automatically, you know, answer all of my questions. And at that time and at that point, it was not the testimony that Yah wanted. That's why when Job went to Yah and wanted to talk to Yah about his situation, of course, you see the response that came down from the Shamayim, and basically it was, who are you to talk to me like that? And you got so much to say. Where were you when and he started talking about creation. Where were you when and I'm not, that's not my lesson for tonight, but he goes into a lot of things, like, where were you when I stretched out to heaven? Where were you when I laid the foundation? Where were you? And he goes on, because he's trying to get Job to understand something about testimony. He's trying to get Job to understand that it's not about what you and your testimony is all about right now. What is meaningful now is whether or not you have seen your sin, whether you can confess that we have sinned. All right, I'll pick this up in the next video right here.